What's up, guys? Ben here, bringing you another video today. We got our final two teams coming up here, and we're going to talk about in this video for our 2023-2024 CDL preseason review series, whatever. Two teams heading in opposite directions, I think. We got the LAG franchise, Los Angeles Guerrillas, who really are just kind of putting things together with duct tape at this point, and I don't really know about their upside, and we'll talk about it. And the Miami Heretics, who have taken the Florida Mutineers, rebranded it, gone with a little bit of a Spanish spin to it. So let's talk about both teams, my expectations and thoughts on the season, starting with LAG. So let's start talking about LAG. And I got to be honest, I've roasted a couple of bad moves in the Vanguard Modern Warfare 2 preseason on some of these other videos. These guys might have the worst one, bro. Okay, so in Vanguard, if you remember, they did end up winning Major 2 with Spart, and they made a few roster changes, and somehow they still didn't qualify for champs. And Slasher obviously went to Atlanta FaZe, and they ended up picking up Alec from the team, and they made a decision to run back the trio that had struggled for two splits in a row and didn't qualify for champs. And immediately they got slammed at the Major 1 cycle. They were okay online, but they were the worst hardpoint team in the game, and they were complete non-factor at the first Major. They ended up blowing up their team completely, taking 3 players from LAG Academy, Assault, Exceed, and Joe Deceives, pairing them in RCs. And again, there was just no success. I mean, you see the results here on your screen. They had one event, Major 2 cycle, where they did make top 8. Every other one, they were literally showing up and out of there in 2 days. So last season for LAG was a mess, and we have to talk about how in the middle of this season, and mind you, this is near the middle of the season, the announcement came out about LAG sort of firing all their staff, winding down esports. So there's been a lot of drama and circumstance going around this team, and it doesn't excuse the bad decisions they made at the beginning of the year that they had to blow up. And honestly, look, bro, outside this one weekend in Vanguard, if I scroll through here, they were just have never been a really good team in any level of a weekend in most of the CDL. I mean, I think it's fair. They literally had maybe 2 good weekends of Call of Duty as a franchise in 4.5 years, which is wild to me. And look, I don't want to spend too much time talking about the stats because they blew up this team, and I want to spend more time talking about the new roster. But I mean, this is where they netted out at the end of the season, and it's bad in every game mode. Just like with London/Carolina, there's just nothing really to talk about because almost all these players have not come back. But I mean, bro, they didn't really have a standout game mode. They didn't really have a standout map. In fact, going through here, they have a winning record on any one of these maps. They did not, which is actually pretty impressive. They didn't even have a single map in matches that was a go-to map. Everything was either 500 or below. So just a real forgetful year for LAG. And again, I think it goes back towards the beginning of the situation where they decided to run back a trio that clearly didn't work in Vanguard, and then they decided to blow it up and bring in the trio and all that stuff. They also had to deal with, and I think to be fair, the situation with Alec maybe wanting to leave to join Optic and then blah, blah, blah. I know he didn't have the best of years, and now he's on Seattle, but just they never really were on a progression path, and I think needed to kind of rethink things in the offseason. So what do LAG decide to do? Well, first, they take forever in the offseason to really talk to anybody. They basically were the last team to really put together a squad, and it really came together. I'm recording this the Thursday before matches starting in the CDL, and basically 3 or 4 weeks ago, this all came together. I mean, literally came together when the game had first come out. They signed Vios to be their coach, and Vios had been a fairly successful coach in the amateur scene. He came in and formed kind of an interesting squad with some players he had coached before, / had been on the franchise before. So you have Assault, who was obviously on the team last year, Diamond Con, who was on their academy team. Fame actually had that interesting run with Minnesota Rocker, kind of playing different roles last season. And then Estriel comes in from the challenger scene. So a little bit of an interesting kind of mix of sort of different avenues of picking up players on this team. Let's go kind of position by position here. So Assault and Diamond Con's an interesting AR combo. 2 players have traditionally played a main AR role, but I think Diamond Con can play a little bit quicker if needed. I just think my concern with this 2 AR combo is that I just don't really see a game mode that they're going to be an above average or elite level combo in either hardpoint, S&D, or control. And I think most of the other teams just have more firepower at this position. These are solid players. These are players that can play an above or at replacement level, but I don't think it's going to be good enough. I don't think they're going to play that level consistently to make this team good enough to really not be fighting and scrapping for making winners bracket, making champs, etc. And it feels the same for the other 2 players in the team. I thought Fame played pretty decent for Rocker last year, and curious to see what he does on this team, but I think this team has less talent than the Rocker team last year. And Etriel's a little bit of a question mark. He's coming from challengers, not really sure what to expect. Maybe he can come in and surprise people. I saw him play a bunch last year, and I thought he was really good at that level, but this is a big step up. So my kind of thoughts on this LAG roster is I kind of see the thought process here, but I just don't see I don't see a high ceiling with this team. I'm gonna be honest. I could see their floor being maybe if they get ahead early here a little bit higher than maybe some of the other bottom squads. You know, we'll take a look at their schedule in a second, but maybe they can kind of flirt with the top 8, top 6 placing at this first event. But I think as people start to like really, learn the game and get ahead, I just don't really see the talent on this team being able to hold up with other squads. And I also think the issue is that I just don't know if they're going to make roster changes this year, considering that there's like 2 people that work for this org right now. All right, so here's LAG's schedule for the first split of the season. They're going to start off with, well, a first match on Saturday against Toronto, and then a second match against New York on Sunday. Don't expect them, to be honest, to win either of those matches. I think Toronto's going to be a good team off the rip. And even if the New York series goes a distance, I just don't see it with this LAG team. And it doesn't get any easier, bro. They got to play LA Thieves as their last match before the break. And then coming back, their first match on their break is Atlanta FaZe. I just see maybe 1 win in these 4. At best, I just don't see them being 2-2. And they're going to close out with some potentially winnable matches, maybe matches they have a chance on. Breach, Rocker, and Heretics to finish up. So the Heretics match could be really massive if either one of those teams is on the bubble to make a winner's bracket. But looking at this schedule, I think there's maybe 2, maybe 3 wins here if I'm being generous for LAG. But I do think that unless they get some surprise momentum early, I think this team's probably going to start in losers bracket for Major 1. And this is one of those squads that I just don't know if they're able to make sort of deep losers bracket runs if they're behind the 8 ball this year against better squads. And I expect LAG, look, with the new point scoring, I think no one's going to be out of it until, we get to Saturday of the final event of the season before champs. I just don't see this LAG squad being as competitive as other teams. It was one of the last teams that forms, and unless they're a super dark horse and they surprise us early, I think, unfortunately, this season will be another lost one for this franchise. Let's talk about a team I think that might have some potential, which is the Miami Heretics. So they've rebranded from the Florida Mutineers, and let me briefly talk about sort of some of the stuff from last year before this new team came in. So after Vanguard, they had to make some major changes with Big Wake leaving to go to Boston, Sky's going to New York Subliners. Again, this is because of like free agency. So they end up starting the season with a combination of Major Maniac, Havoc, Brack, and Vickle as a squad. And, if we take a look here, like to start the season, they were looking like, kind of a fringe qualifier team. They sort of rotated Dave Patty in at some point before the Boston event, and they didn't play particularly good at that one either. They didn't try to combo with Fellow and Cap coming in, and it would be Havoc, Brack, Fellow, and Cap, and they were also still like kind of iffy. And so then they brought Vickle back in for Havoc, and that didn't work out. And actually, by the end of the season, weirdly enough, going into Major 5, they actually looked like a top 6-ish team. A lot of pros I've talked to have thought that Brack, Fellow, and Cap and Vickle combo, once they actually kind of gelled after a few months, started to be pretty good, but it wasn't enough for them to qualify for champs, and unfortunately, they were on the outside looking in. So over the off season, the Heretics organization, if you follow esports, they're pretty big in the Europe world, especially the Spanish-based org. They come in, and now they've got kind of an operating agreement with the Florida Mutineers, with Misfits about the spot. They keep Vickle from last season, but they bring in a bunch of other talent. Eric Boom, Lucky, and Metals from Challengers, and Juan Journey as well from Challengers. Multiple different kind of team combinations they were on last year, but they were all kind of on top 4, top 6 teams in EU, and teams that were very competitive towards the end when we start talking about Challenger champs. Good, interesting combination of players. Some players here like Journey and Eric Boom, who have been around for a minute and have potentially played in like during the CWL era. Under Heretics and Black Ops 4. So this isn't like a super rookie team. There's actually a decent amount of experience here. Now you see that it says that Juan is a substitute. They've actually rotated their team down a little bit to bring him in. So it's kind of an interesting combination of players right now. And so this is your combination they're rocking this year. You've got Lucky and Vickle running ARs actually. So that's pretty interesting AR combo, and Eric Boom and Juan on the subs. I kind of like, well, first off, I think Lucky is really good, and I'm excited to see him get a run in the CDL. I think that kid's kind of nasty. Vickle, obviously, I thought played really well at the end of last season, but from slaying, sometimes he's not like the strongest suit. But as far as S&D play and other kind of minimap plays, I think he's a really smart player. So I think he's got potential to have kind of a breakout season here. Journey and Eric have been around for a minute, and I'm curious to see what they can do with this rerun kind of at the pro level for both of them. So I'm not really concerned about this Miami team like adjusting to playing in NA, and I think potentially if their play style and their kind of approach is a little bit different from other teams, they might catch people off guard. That being said, though, for all the gas that I've given this team, talent-wise, compared to the top 4, top 6 teams, I don't know if they're quite there slaying-wise. They might get kind of slammed by the top 4 teams, to be honest. But I think there's some potential here for this team to make winners bracket and actually get decently deep at some of these tournaments, which I hope they do, because this is the Florida/Miami we had to watch last year. And while they were a decent S&D team through parts of the season, they were horrific at hardpoint and not that good at control either. I don't even want to scroll through the specific stats again, because this team has changed a lot. And Vickel's really the only one that's still on the team. And he wasn't even on the team most of the time for the squad. They were just, again, like a couple of teams we talked about recently, stats wise and performance wise, like they were sort of a bottom feeder. All right, so let's take a look at the schedule and kind of wrap up my thoughts on Miami Heretics. So they're going to start off against Carolina, which is a very winnable match against Clay and the boys. And then they'll play Vegas and Rocker to finish their 3 matches before the break. And I legit think that there's a chance that Miami can win 2 or 3 of these matches. Obviously, there's a role where they can win 0-1, and then, you know, they're behind the 8 ball, and that's pretty tough. But as far as like other sets we've seen teams have early on this season, this is like a very winnable set. Then they get back and they play Seattle and Boston, and then Optic and LAG. So of total, if you look at this set, Optic is the only what I would qualify top 4 team on the schedule. Boston, Seattle, kind of like in Minnesota, kind of fringe the rest of like top 8. And then everybody else is sort of at the bottom. So as far as like a schedule you can get from Miami, this is the easiest schedule I think of any team in the CDL that they have for this split. And there's a world where this Miami team can beat a lot of these mid-pack to bottom teams and do a particularly good job of getting like 4 to 5 wins and making winners bracket for this first major. So I think they've got to take advantage of this easy split, because if you scroll through, like looking at the major 2 set, they've got Toronto, LA Thieves, and New York in the next one, and Atlanta FaZe. So they play 3 of the top 4 teams during that qualifier stage. The next stage, they got Toronto, Thieves, FaZe, Optic, and New York. So it's not going to get any easier, you know, if we keep scrolling after this. It looks like the major 4 stage with Optic, Toronto, and FaZe. Okay, but this first set, gotta get points here. If they struggle early, it's not going to get any easier, and I can see this team kind of crumbling. Again, I'm not worried about like homesickness issues and all that stuff. Their biggest problem is that if this team doesn't feel like they can win, being able to make changes is tough, because they're a Spanish team, because of I assume they're going to stick to that formula. It's not easy to bring somebody in over from Europe, get visas, get all of that. They have a sub and they can try rotating players. But, you know, if they want to make changes from challengers and go to a mixed team, it's going to be an interesting switch. If they want to bring anyone over from Europe, it's going to be even harder. So got to take advantage early if you're this Heretics team. I'm going to make the prediction that they do sneak into the top 8, top 6 for the first event, but I think teams will catch up. And it's a bit of a question mark to see if this team can hold their own against sort of the middle pack of the CDL. But I want to see them succeed, because I think a lot of people are rooting for this team, and I am one of them. So those are my thoughts on both these teams. LAG, not feeling too great about. Miami Heretics, I am feeling great about. So let me know in the comments what you guys think. Like if you enjoyed, subscribe for more. The season starts tomorrow. I'm excited. You're excited. Gonna get a couple more kind of preview videos over the course next day. You know, kind of my match predictions, award predictions. We'll do a Q&A as well next few days, so be on the lookout for that. And as always, guys, we will see you on the next video.